Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Excellencies, dear friends, good morning to you all. And once again, our gratitude for our brethren in the Kingdom of Bahrain for the tremendous hospitality and for this really timely meeting. And of course, a big shout out to you, John, and your colleagues at the IISS for continuing to provide us with a forum for such a rich, deep, insightful dialogue. I don't want to engage in an intellectual sort of analysis of deterrence versus diplomacy. I think there are better people who are more equipped to do that than we politicians who are having to deal with real issues in real time. So I just want to say that our region, we need more than deterrence, we need solutions. Crises have been going on for far too long, causing far too much destruction, too much pain, and too many missed opportunities. Key to that is identifying the sources of threats to our region, to its prosperity. My dear friend Abdul Latif spoke of a region that is safe, secure, and prosperous. And that is a goal on which we all agree. The question is, how do we get to that safe and secure and prosperous future? And we do that by, first of all, again, identifying what are the sources of threats that we're dealing with, agreeing on final answers to them, and then employ active and proactive diplomacy to try and get to those solutions. What has been not really there is a proactive diplomacy from the region itself. I think in this part of the world we need to take more ownership of our issues, and we need to be more active, more involved in trying to find those solutions. That does not mean we do not work with our friends and partners. Absolutely, we do need to work and coordinate with our friends and partners globally, because a lot of the issues with which we are grappling in this region do have implications that resonate way beyond the borders of our neighborhood. But ultimately, we need to be more active and more involved. And to get a safe, prosperous, and secure future, we need to focus on our peoples, on creating horizons, on creating opportunities. And to do that, we need to dry up sources of conflict and deal with the environments of despair and lawlessness and injustice that we see so rampant in so many places of our region. We need to accept that there are threats that are inherent in conflicts that are ongoing, starting from the root cause of conflict, the Palestinian-Israeli conflict, and the absence of a practical, just solution to it, going through the crisis in Syria, in Yemen, in Libya, supporting Iraq in consolidating the great victory they achieved against Daesh, and then moving on. But other sources of threat have to do with creating opportunity for our people, our youth, our young people. To me, a major source of threat is 3 million Syrian kids of school-going age who are not going to school. More than 12 million Arab kids who are denied their right to education. Millions of refugees scattered all over the region and abroad with no hope and no future. This is the real source of threat, and this is where we need active diplomacy to try and see how we can all pool our resources and move together to create answers to those questions. And unfortunately, we all speak of conflict fatigue, donor fatigue, and it is happening. And we see that very clearly in the case of refugees, where we see less and less attention being paid to them, and somehow forgetting the fact that if we abandon those refugees to hate, to need, to bitterness, to despair, to ignorance, then we're really sowing the seeds of future conflict that are going to be worse for all of us. And that's why, again, I go back to proactive diplomacy, and let's identify areas where we need to move. We cannot jump over conflicts, we cannot jump over issues. On the Palestinian-Israeli conflict, we cannot accept the status quo, and we should not mistake the calm for acquiescence. That conflict remains a major source of conflict. The only way to solving it is the two-state solution, and that means that we need to work together towards bringing about that solution that would realize a sovereign, independent Palestinian state on June 4, 1967, lines with occupied Jerusalem as capital, living in peace and security with Israel per all international laws and all previous initiatives. This is not a slogan. This is not just a repetition of an old stand. This is reality, because the conflict is there and you have to solve it. And how could we have peace, and how could we deter against any threat if the GDP per capita per Palestinian is under $3,000 compared to GDP per capita of over $40,000 for Israelis? It just doesn't work. That is not a recipe for a future of peace and security and prosperity that we all want. Go to Syria. Again, a crisis ongoing for 11 years. We need a solution. We all know that the solution has to be a political solution. And we all know that the suffering of the Syrian people has gone way too far. Again, how do we deter the threat inherent in the continuation of that conflict? By working together actively with our partners to bring about a political solution that should start by bringing the conflict to being back once again to be about Syria and Syrian people, and not about international and regional agendas competing. How do we do that? We in the region have to do our bit. It is incomprehensible, inconceivable that everybody gets a seat on the table except for the Arab region collectively. And that's why we in Jordan say we must get together, work with our partners, work with our friends, and try and articulate and move with a solution to the crisis. Again, I can go on about Libya, about Yemen, about all those issues, but ultimately this region needs to come together in a proactive diplomatic manner and see what we can do here to articulate solutions to our problems, and then rally regional and international support for it, and we move forward. COVID, dear friends, have exposed how fragile our regional cooperation mechanisms are when it came to health infrastructure, pharmaceuticals, food security, water security. COVID has shown not only that we cannot do it alone, but it has shown that there's a lot to be done in order for us to create the infrastructure necessary for us to be able to address the challenges that we all face. And that's where you need active diplomacy. We go to the Arab League meetings as colleagues here, and I think more and more of us are saying it's about time that we started really building through a mechanism of regional cooperation that does not just focus on talking the talk politically, but also does focus on doing what it takes to create that infrastructure of regional cooperation. So we do need proactive diplomacy. Instead of thinking about deterrence, we really need to think about solutions. And while it is acceptable to employ deterrence as a tool for a short period of time, it cannot be a replacement to long-term thinking of how to solve problems and create regional relations on the basis of respect and on basis that would allow for all of us to come together and work together. Take the issue of Iranian-Arab relations, for instance. And again, I think I can comfortably speak for all my Arab colleagues when I say none of us wants a conflict with Iran. We all want to be able to get on, and we don't want another crisis in the region. But for that to happen, we need to identify why is it that we have tension. And it is because of policies that are interventionist in our affairs. And once that stops, and once we're able to rebuild relations on the basis of non-interference and respect for neighborly relations, we should be able to move together and work together and pool all those tremendous resources that we all bring to the table and move forward with that. So I think, again, we need to be diplomacy is the key word, but it is active diplomacy. It's not reactive diplomacy. It's proactive diplomacy, and it has to be a diplomacy that is based, anchored in a clear understanding of what the challenges are and facing them head on, and accept that when things don't work, they don't work. And when we need to find alternative solutions, we need to find alternative solutions. We cannot be stuck in ideological kind of dogmatic positions and not move forward. This is the dynamic nature and the fluid nature of conflicts and the challenges that we have. And again, if we talk about other sources of threat, we talk about terrorism, which is a growing threat. As His Majesty King Abdullah keeps saying, terrorism has been defeated but not destroyed. this is not a threat that you want to deter. This is a threat that you want to sort of eliminate completely. And in order for us to be able to eliminate that threat completely, we need again to see what is it that we need to do. It is not enough to focus on the military component of it, nor is it enough to focus on the security component of it. What we need to do is to look at the ideology and stand up to it. And this is something that only we in the region would be able to do, of course, with the support of our partners. We need to come up with the message and say that those people do not represent the faith and do not represent our values and culture. But we need to do that. But also, most importantly, we need again to create horizons. We need to make sure that we solve chaos and despair and other injustices on which radical thinking in all its manifestations and form thrive. And that, again, needs a proactive diplomacy, and that needs a pooling of resources. In Jordan, reality is we've been at the receiving end of every crisis in this part of the world. And we continue to deal with that, but we continue to deal with that in employing a proactive diplomacy, again, that tries to engage, that tries to face things head on, and that promotes dialogue and conversation and engagement as means to addressing those conflicts. We're going to continue to do what we've always done, work for peace, work for stability, work for security, and also work for building infrastructure of regional cooperation. One example is the trilateral mechanism that we have with our dear brothers in Iraq. That's a mechanism that is, I keep saying, it is for us, because quite often we get to ask, is this an alliance? Is this? No. We say, no, it's just three countries coming together to do what's best for our countries and for our peoples by building on the natural complementarities that exist. And it is a block in a building that we hope will grow, bringing in all our brothers and all our partners who do see an opportunity in that and who do want to work with us on expanding areas of agreement and areas of cooperation. And this is a region that, again, has had more than its share of challenges. And I think part of the approach must be is how do we manage disagreement as we work for expanding areas of agreement. And I think there's a lot that we can do together. And again, if we do start with things that matter, if we do start with trying and create better conditions for our people, better opportunities for our people, I think that will create a momentum that would ultimately help us move forward and address the political issues. So again, I just want to sum up by saying deterrence could inherently mean dealing with a problem on a short-term basis. And that is not going to cut it for our region, which has been plagued with crises that have gone on for far too long. What we need to do is to move from deterrence into identifying solutions and employ inclusive, proactive diplomacy and address that solution, address those problems and find solutions and get to that safe, prosperous, secure region that my dear friend spoke of. Thank you.